What's going on YouTube? This is SG1 Sports here on the Penn State channel at the Voice of College Football. We're going to preview the 2023 schedule. Before we get to 2023 though, let's look back at 2022. Here was the schedule from 2022 for Penn State. You can see only 2 losses, and both of those coming to playoff teams, of course. The Big Ten overall was down last year, so they didn't really have any challenges outside of Michigan and Ohio State. You look at their non-conference, they played Auburn, and I'm sure when that game was scheduled, that was probably assumed at that time to be a really tough game, going on the road to face Auburn, but Auburn, of course, was not very good last year. Penn State went in there and took care of business, so it's kind of a weird year. You know, the Purdue game, that was probably their toughest game, or the game that maybe you thought they might lose as you were watching during the season, outside of Michigan and Ohio State. But they were able to come back in that game, take care of business, and really cruise through the rest of this schedule. It turned out to be just not a very tough schedule. Again, mostly because the Big Ten was kind of down outside of those top 3 teams. But you look ahead to 2023, these are the teams that they'll play outside of the division: West Virginia, Delaware, and UMass. So not a very tough non-conference schedule there. Of course, Delaware, UMass should be easy wins. West Virginia, that'll be a competitive game maybe, but Penn State should definitely be the better team. Plus, they're playing at home. And then you look at the games outside of the division. They'll play Illinois, Iowa, and Northwestern. Those will be the 3 games, again, outside of the division. Iowa will be at home. They do have to go on the road to face Illinois and also Northwestern. It's kind of tough right now to even guess what the Big Ten West is going to look like. But not having to play Iowa on the road, I think, is big. Northwestern shouldn't be too tough of a test. And then Illinois is kind of a wild card. Of course, they were a surprise team this past year. I don't know if they're going to be able to duplicate that again in 23, but that could be a tricky game there on the road. So now we go week by week and take a look at how this schedule plays out. They'll play West Virginia first on September 2nd. Then it's Delaware on the 9th. Then on the road at Illinois on the 16th. Back home for Iowa on September 23rd. And on the road at Northwestern on September 30th. So you look at that first month of the season. All winnable games for sure. Illinois, again, could be tricky on the road. Iowa, they could wind up being a pretty good team this year. But the good news is you get that game at home. And then, after those 5 games, they get their bye week. Not really an ideal time for the bye week, coming that early and coming before UMass. So I don't, the Big Ten didn't do them any favors there, giving them a bye week before UMass. But they'll play UMass after the bye week. So, very, very realistic expectation that they could start off 6-0. And then the schedule, of course, does get tougher. They'll play Ohio State on October the 21st. That game will be on the road, and it'll be a big one. Very tough game, of course. The game was really good last year. I expect a close game again this year. Indiana after that at home on October the 28th. Then it'll be a road game on the road at Maryland. That's a tricky game for a couple of reasons. One, just Maryland could be pretty good this year, and the game is on the road. And then also it's right before Michigan. And regardless of whether or not they beat Ohio State, if they win that game, if they lose that game, if they have 1 loss, if they're undefeated, either way, going into that Michigan game, assuming they beat Maryland, that's going to be a huge game, a game with big-time division implications. So they've got to get past Maryland. They can't look ahead to Michigan. That is a very, very typical spot there for a trap game when you look at Maryland on November the 4th. But after that, they will play Michigan on the 11th. They get them at home this year. You would figure that playing at home they're going to have a better shot this time, but Michigan's going to be really good again. That'll be a tough test. They play Rutgers after that on November 18th. That game will be at home, and then they close things out with Michigan State on the road. We've seen some strange games in that series before, maybe some upsets and some things that you didn't expect to see. So who knows in that matchup? But overall, it's a very similar schedule to last year. I really feel like it's going to come down to Ohio State and Michigan. Those will be the games. You look at the rest of the schedule. There are some potential trip-ups. Illinois on the road. Just talked about Maryland on the road. Even Michigan State on the road. So some games you got to watch out for on the road. But overall, Ohio State and Michigan are going to be the 2 toughest tests. And if Penn State takes care of business, if they play like most people expect them to play, they've got a good shot to win the rest of those games. And again, outside of those 2 games, a very manageable schedule for the Nittany Lions in 2023.